Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're talking about better intelligence. So, in my life, I think there have been some not so subtle hints to an idea maybe that it's better to know certain things than other things. And some of these as ideas is that knowing certain things will pay you more money. So there are certain fields, like being a doctor or being a lawyer or something like that, they'll pay you more money on average than being in certain other fields. Also, there's certain times where certain information acquires you with better kind of benefits in life, be like communication skills or negotiation skills and things like that. And what I wanted to talk about today is what I think is a rather simple concept, but one that I think we have a tendency to overlook, and it has something to do with society, it has something to do with the way we are as humans and whatnot. But before I get too much into why, I'm just going to start out with what I'm talking about. And ultimately, I think that information, whatever it is just information. And as much as sometimes we like to say that one piece of information may be more important than another piece of information, information is just what it is. And we place our importance criteria on different pieces of information and make them more or less useful, more or less important, more or less lucrative. But that doesn't change that the information is just information. And whether or not we know it or whether or not humankind knows it doesn't change the value of the information. It's just something that exists. And what do I mean by this? Well, there are a lot of things to know, and depending on what you value as a person, I feel you tend to learn more of one thing rather than another thing, because you perceive those things to be more valuable, or more valuable within your interest, or more valuable within your ability to attain, or your needs. And we tend to not pay attention or pay money or pay effort to get information that we don't perceive as important. So like a video game is made out of information. Like the whole concept of a video game, it's lots of coding and logic arguments that come together to create like this video representation of a story on the screen. But if I don't think video games are important, I'm not going to pay for a video game. Unless maybe I'm like buying it as a gift for somebody, but like that information is not important to me, so maybe it's not something I would pay for. Maybe I am the type of person that likes reading way more, so I buy books instead. And I value the books more than video games, so I spend my money on books. But this is kind of a trivial example, and what I'm really trying to get at is that as we learn things, or as information becomes available, humans, I feel, have a tendency to place value on different pieces of information as if they are more valuable than other pieces of information. But often, as time goes on, something that's interesting, I think, is that certain pieces of information that were thought to not be that important become incredibly important. Where we don't always know everything. I would go so far as to say we always don't know everything. And so sometimes a piece of information is only important when it's in a group with other pieces of information. And when you don't have all the pieces, maybe the pieces you do have are not important. But as soon as you get all of them, oh, wow, now this piece is very important. Or maybe when the situation changes, the information that you want changes. So there's been times where certain informations or certain theories have been put forward and they haven't been treated as true or realistic, or there are certain times where certain pieces of information or certain studies have been done where the results from those studies of the information that's been brought forward at the time that it was brought forward was not seen as very important, but down the road, as time progressed and maybe technology caught up to be able to validate something, or a different study came out, or a different theory came out, or something like that, now this information is useful, so we look at it as important. But the information never changed, and the importance of information, or the value we place on certain specific pieces of information, is very connected to our perspective. And I would go so far as to say, in my belief, nothing else. It's the collective perspective of people that it's kind of like supply and demand, where we want something so the value goes up, where the actual value of the information is not judged by it standing on its own. It's judged by our desire for it. Now, I've walked around in circles talking about this for the last 5 minutes, and the reason that I'm bringing this up, and the reason that I think this is important, is because I think often we can fall into places as people where we reject information because we think it's not important, or we reject people's opinion because we think they're not important, or they don't matter, or something like that. And I'm not trying to argue that all opinions are equal. I don't believe that. I think that if, you have more reason to be an expert in a specific topic, or if you researched something or something like that, then yeah, you might have more important opinions than somebody who knows nothing about the topic and is just saying what they think without any research or anything like that. I think things like that. But in terms of knowing what's important and knowing what's not important informationally, I think knowing that your desires and your perspectives can kind of taint the intrinsic value of a piece of information is a good thing to know when you're judging information. And I think knowing that, or accepting that and assuming that, if you're willing to agree with me and believe that is true, that no information is important than any other information, I think that really does help us with patience and with diligence in listening. Because if I believe that all information has equal importance, at least until fully evaluated, or even evaluated somewhat, then I think I'm more likely or more willing to listen and be careful in my listening and really seek to understand, and not pretend I understand, not just tell myself I understand, but really listen and really try to gain the information as if it could be important. Because I realize that no information is more important than other information until I say so. And because of that, I think all information is valuable, just maybe not for this particular situation, but I think if you can find a way to put the correct information in the correct situation, oftentimes you can obtain benefits. Just like if you can put the correct key in the correct lock, you can open the door. And I think oftentimes we tend to try and say this door is better than this door, or this door will lead you to a better place than that door, and so these keys are more important than those keys. But everybody's different, and we all have our different perspectives and personalities and desires and struggles, and I think we should look and open the doors ourselves and really see what's behind them, and not just believe or take for granted or try and say that this door is better than that door when I haven't looked behind both of them. I understand that if there are an infinite amount of doors, you do have to make some choices about which ones you're going to try to open, because you can't open all of them, because you're immortal, and you're probably immortal, and you're going to die at some point. You don't have time to open all of them. But I think balancing that thought with the skepticism that you might be selling yourself short in thinking you know what is important and therefore you know what doors to open, may lead you down a place that gets you to ignore things that would actually be important or enlightening or bring you happiness or whatever sort of benefit if you had taken the time to really understand it. And if you are assuming importance or lack of importance before evaluating something, you are risking missing out on the actual benefits it provides, and settling for the perceived benefits that it would provide. Now, this is great when your perceptions match up with what is actually going on, but I would argue that that doesn't happen perfectly very often, and it happens less often than you would think. I try to do this in my own life. This is definitely a struggle, but even with this podcast that I'm doing, or with the workshops and the community discussions that I put on, it's about actively cultivating the ability to listen and seek to understand and try to be non-biased with the information that is given to us. And I realize there's like junk information, and there's stuff that I have no desire to interface with, and I've made that decision based on my previous experience. I do understand that kind of stuff, but in terms of new information that I'm unsure about, I think that it is good on almost all fronts to seek to really find out what this thing is about, what this person is trying to say, and what information is really there. How can I benefit from this? And sometimes the benefit is understanding that this is not important and you should stay away from it, or you shouldn't pursue it anymore. But really giving it a good run to see how you can use it, or if you can use it. So that's really this idea in a nutshell. I think it is very important. I don't think it's very complicated. I don't think it takes 30 minutes to discuss. So I'm going to not really talk about it too much. But honestly, I named this podcast Better Information as kind of an oxymoron to what we are talking about, because I don't think there's any information that's better than any other information. I think that I have my opinions and I have my perspectives on which information is important, or what's more interesting, or what I think will bring me benefits that I think I desire. But me being a human, which is what I think I am, over time I've learned over and over and over, which is something I still kind of refuse to accept, but that I'm fallible and I can be wrong, and I can think something for 20 years and it can be incorrect, or it could be not the full story because I don't have all the information, funny enough. But challenging those perceptions and keeping an open mind and saying, this may be useful, let me vet it out, I think is so important. And listening to other people as if they're trying to tell you something valuable. Because I don't think people really would talk to you unless they thought what they're saying was valuable on some level. And so listening as if that could be true. I think this is a very important part about having realistic conversation and building good relationships. But also I think it's just a good part of living and growing and learning, to where you are being open-minded and you are trying to give the benefit of the doubt to the new, and not being stuck in your ways and saying what I know is what's important to me and I don't need anything else. And I'm not saying what you know is not important to you, but there could be so many other things that are so great for you that could help you with this or that thing. And if you are not open to the possibility of other information being good or important or credible or I was going to say variable, but that's not the right word. Verifiable. There you go. Then I think you're closing yourself off from a lot of opportunities that you could have. So ultimately, I think keep an open mind if you can. Give people the benefit of the doubt. And really try to learn and open yourself up to new ideas, because you don't know what's important until you already know it. And sometimes something that you hear or learn today that's not important can become extremely important in the future once you learn some other things, or once you get put in a different situation. You never know what's going to be important to you. You don't know who you are going to be in the future. So having that open mind and having that patience and that diligence and that humility to listen, I think is very important, and it will really benefit you in the long run. To not settle for simple answers, to get the real truth, to be patient and struggle with the concept, especially if you don't agree with it or if you don't like it. Liking something or agreeing with something is not a good grounds for accepting something. Just because I like something doesn't mean I should accept it. It should be true. And I shouldn't just lie to myself because it makes me feel good. In terms of priorities and importance, having a sway on what information you accept. But this has been a short and sweet episode of Perspectal. Let me know what you think. Information, I think, is very important. It comes in a lot of different forms, and I think if we can take the time and have the patience to seek to understand, we may not always get there, but we'll get a lot farther than if we never tried. And we can really find out if there is some information that is better than other information. So, yeah. This has been Jordan Tremaine on the Perspectal podcast that is about better information, and hope you guys have a good day.